Hi everyone, you're listening to Escape from Christianity with me, Alicia.
And me, Jason.
And we are in Virginia. And I just want to pick up where we left off, which was me and Jason had just been together. We had celebrated we'd already celebrated our first Feast of Tabernacles, our Feast of Booths together. And I had been studying, I had come in contact with Nehemiah Gordon, and I cannot remember the name of the guy that he's always with. It's the other preacher.
I can't remember.
I don't remember his name. And I had listened to Jono from Torah Pearls and Jason from Spiritual Babies, and they, I believe, were still Messianic at the time.
Now, during this time, too, during the first year we were together in our first feast and everything, you got to understand that she was approaching me too. Now I didn't know she was going through this, talking, listening with Jono and Jason and all. I had no idea. All I knew, I figured she still believed in Christ and everything. But and you did, didn't you? I mean, at this point, you did.
I think that Jono and Jason were still very much.
You were questioning it.
I was questioning it, and I know that I was questioning it for a while before Torah Pearls and...
Well, see, she would come to me and she would say things like, do you ever feel like God doesn't exist? Do you ever feel like Jesus Christ isn't real? Do you ever feel like maybe that whole story is made up? Those were some of the questions she was asking me, and I will tell you right now, being from our background, that was extremely disturbing for me. It really bothered me, because here I am, the mother of my daughter. She's coming to me, and from what I understood, we completely meshed perfectly with religion. And like I said, and you can go and listen to some of our background videos earlier on, but we believed that we were bound to one another forever. And here I was marrying this woman. She's changing her religion, which we had been for my entire life. I have been nothing but what I was into, and most of hers. And so here she is wanting to change things up on me. It was very, very disturbing for me. It bothered me greatly. But anyway, it was at the feast, in the second feast that we had spent together, Feast of Booths, Sukkot, however you want to, so everyone understands what we're talking about. And like I said, this is a fall holy days. It occurs typically between September and October, somewhere around there is when it's kept. And so we were away. We were in Pigeon Forge that year. We had stayed, and her friend approached him. Now, first, I'll admit, my father had mentioned to me, he said, do you notice that the moons are kind of messed up this year, where usually the Feast of Booths begins at a full moon, and so you could go out the very first night and you'll see a full moon, because it's the 15th day?
Yeah, that's not always true, but that was a comment he had made.
Right, and so Alicia and I had noticed that the moon wasn't at the cycle properly. It probably was like a couple days early, and it wasn't a full moon at all. And so we started studying the moons, and we had gone over to a friend of hers that she had known for a few years. We went to their condo that they were actually in Pigeon Forge that year as well, and she had a new baby too, because Alicia and her were kind of pregnant around the same time.
Yeah, we were.
And so we went over and we hung out with them a little bit, got to see the new little baby and all, and I got to talking with her
Miss Stephanie's husband.
Her husband, and anyway, we were talking to him about the moon, and he was pointing out the moon cycles, and he said, well, you notice that when it talks about, the what do they call it, the world to come, that we're going to keep the new moons, and we're going to, all the new moons are going to be kept, and all the festivals, all the holy days and everything are going to be kept. And I noticed that, and I said, well, yeah, you're right, it does say that, but we're not really in those last days. We're not, Messiah hasn't come. I mean, Jesus Christ hadn't come back yet. And, all this stuff hadn't occurred that we, of course, believed had to occur, being Christians. And so I said, that's not true. But, it is right. The moon's kind of weird this year. And so after that discussion, me and my wife Alicia, we went back to our hotel room, and we decided to book a couple extra days in Pigeon Forge because we believed we needed to go ahead and do some more study. So we stayed a couple more days. We studied nonstop. I mean, we studied all the time.
It was days and days. This was like the first major study we had done since
for like
divorce.
2 weeks.
Yeah, no, we studied a lot longer than that.
Yeah, but as far as 2 weeks, we studied all the time for 2 straight weeks. Not just me and you, but me and you, and my dad was studying it too. Mm-hmm. We were all really concerned about the moon cycles, and we realized that that back during the time of the temple, that before the dispersion, the Jews would sight the moon, and it says that that's why God created the stars and the moon and the sun and all, was to keep time and to keep days properly. And so they would do that, and that's where our study had led us.
Yeah, but I know for me, that was the
beginning.
That was really the beginning where the dominoes were pushed, and we were on this path of finding out. And it was no longer looking to these booklets from the old church.
Well, we realized that Mr. Armstrong didn't know what he was talking about, and that he tried to say, he misquoted Jewish words, Hebrew words. He tried to say they meant something they did not mean, and then he would turn around and say, and they don't know what they're talking about. But here's a good point that Rabbi Tovia Singer had made, is that how can you tell a Jew that they don't understand their own language? Hebrew is a language of the Jewish nation. To tell them they don't understand what their own language means doesn't make sense. It's like telling, someone who speaks Spanish that, they can't watch Dora the Explorer. They don't know what it means. But it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And so we started realizing that we could not go with Mr. Armstrong's booklets anymore because they weren't biblically bound. They didn't follow the Bible.
Well, I don't know if we had quite reached that point yet, because I know for a fact it was after that feast we studied the entire feast. And
I still believed in Christ
after the feast. And then I think we started thinking, well, maybe Mr. Armstrong's wrong here, and maybe he's wrong here. And we definitely believe that he was wrong with the way that the holy days were supposed to be kept, because listening to Nehemiah Gordon, we were convinced that we had to do the sighting of the new moon from Jerusalem, that the new moon from Jerusalem had to be sighted. And so for months and months and months, we studied this. And as I was just basically gorging on anything and everything related to this topic of the new moons, I came in contact, I cannot remember the name of the minister that works with Nehemiah Gordon, but he had written a book about God's name, and I bought that book and read it. And I had done that actually just before the feast, and I started reading his book, and
I'll admit too, right here, I was really irritated because I can't stand Nehemiah Gordon. I want to put that out there right now. I cannot. He gets under my skin, and maybe it's just me. Maybe we're the same type of person. Maybe that's why I cannot watch him without cringing. Everything he's ever put out for me. I mean, if I came home and I found her watching Nehemiah Gordon on YouTube, I would walk out of the room. I would cringe, or I would complain until she turned it off.
You would be livid. Yeah, you would make it known that you did not want me listening to that around you. And so I did try to be respectful of you, and I would listen to it at night, going to sleep with my earphones on or something like that, or if I was walking on the treadmill, turn it on in my headphones, or listen to it when you were gone. And that's what I tried to do, I think, for everything when I started listening to Torah Pearls, and it was Michael Skobek going over 365 Messianic prophecies. That I definitely didn't listen to in front of you. Many of the Jews for Judaism videos that Michael Skobek did, I listened to every single one of those, and most of them I listened to 4 or 5 times. I never listened to them in front of you. And so for this whole, like, from Sukkot until January, February, I was just kind of going through everything I could get my hands on. And anything that was about Judaism, I'd listen to it. But I also, anything that was about, missionary stuff, which would be like
Counter-missionary?
Jews for Jesus. I listened to everything for Jews to Jesus. I listened to debates. I learned about the Catholic history. I learned about Protestant history. That's where I began learning that Sunday was never meant to be the Sabbath, and I think that was, a real eye-opener, because we have been taught that you have to keep Saturday, that Saturday is the Sabbath and not Sunday. And in studying all of this, I found out that Sunday was never meant to be the Sabbath. Sunday was meant to commemorate the resurrection of Jesus and to be the Lord's Day, and it had to do with the new creation. Saturday was for the old covenant, and Sunday was the new covenant. It had nothing to do with being the Sabbath whatsoever. And from there, I'm like, well, obviously, messianic, if Christianity is true, then I think the Catholics have it right. And so I was kind of on this fence of, well, are the Catholics right or are the Jews right? But I kind of knew that the Messianics were kind of way off in left field.
Right, and that's basically when she came to me. She said, I can remember that year, and I don't remember which year, but that year she's talking about back into February, and she came to me and she said, I don't think I can keep the Passover this year. And it really bothered me. It really bothered me because now in our religion, the way that we kept Passover it was basically a reenactment of the Last Supper. We would get together with our church, or the way we were, because at the time we were only meeting in my dad's house. And so we were meeting in my dad's house, and we were having our Passover there. And so what would happen is we would basically reenact the Last Supper. We would all sit around and we would read John, where, he goes through what happened, and the washing of the feet, and the drinking the blood, and the eating the flesh, and we would eat unleavened bread, and we would drink wine, and we would wash each other's feet. Now, the men would wash the men's feet, women would wash the women's feet. And so we had done this one year already, after me and Alicia were married. We had done this with my parents and my sister and all. Anyway, basically the only people who could do it were baptized members, and so we would do that. And that's how it's basically the same idea in Judaism as Yom Kippur. You had to go to Passover so that you could be washed in the blood of Christ and be forgiven of your sins. That was the general idea. That's what it was for. Now, Yom Kippur is the forgiveness of sins for Jews. They believe that their sins are all forgiven and wiped clean on Yom Kippur. And so that's the Christian twist, is that basically Passover and Yom Kippur were joined into one day. And so really when it comes to the Feast of Trumpets, not Feast of Trumpets, was it the Feast of Atonement, but to the Christians, which is Yom Kippur, to the Jews, it doesn't really have any kind of meaning, really, the Feast of Atonement. Not like it means to the Jews. It really kind of washes that meaning away by joining it up with Passover. But anyway, that's John's intention when you read John. And so we would get together and we would do this. She came to me and she said, I'm not going to be able to keep the Passover this year. And so right away I'm thinking, my wife's been baptized. She's not going to keep the Passover. She's going to hell. I mean, in all actuality, the way we don't believe in hell or heaven, we believe that the soul just dies. You're just basically, you die. God allows you to die. You die. You're gone forever.
Well, we believed in a lake of fire.
Yeah, but you die.
Emphasis on the past tense. We believed in a lake of fire, that you didn't burn forever and ever. That you were just thrown into this fiery lake and you died a physical death, and
you never came back.
Yeah.
You never had. You were gone for good if you knew the truth and went against it. And so it really concerned me, and for weeks it really weighed on me pretty bad. So I asked her one day who she had been listening to, and she gave me a couple names that she had been listening to, and I listened to Michael Skobeck in my truck. I was working. I go door to door with my job. I'm an exterminator, so I'm on the road all the time. So I have a Bluetooth headset. I listen on my cell phone a lot of things. I listen to Tanakh Talk. I listen to Michael Skobeck, and I heard Michael Skobeck talk, and he was giving some really good lectures. In fact, if you go back to our videos, you look down into our comments on our videos, I've got them linked there. It's JewsForJudaism.ca. The Jews for Judaism is an organization. They've got a .com and they also have a .ca. But Michael Skobeck's from Canada, so a lot of his stuff is on that site. And I went and I watched a lot of his videos. He's got a YouTube channel as well, and or they do. Not him specifically, but a lot of the stuff is him speaking and doing lectures. And what he said made a lot of sense. It really hit me like a ton of bricks. And I started to realize that maybe my wife was onto something. Maybe and so I approached her and I got to talking to her and I said, well, so what is it that we've been going? What are we going to do? What are we going to do about Passover? What are we going to do about these holy days? Are we going to go away for the feast anymore? What are we going to do? Because basically the feast to the Messianic groups it's a vacation. It's a vacation. You collect up your tithe money, your second tithe or whatever, and you take it and you go on vacation once a year. I'm like, what are we going to do? We need to at least go on a family vacation or something if we're not going to do this. And so it was, my whole entire world flipped completely upside down, and I blame it on her.
Well, I still remember, because what happened is it was that 6 months of intense study, and it seemed like one topic would lead to another topic, and I was back and forth daily, like, one minute I'd be like, I'm going to become Catholic, and the next minute I'd be like, I'm going to become Jewish, and it was literally back and forth, and I am so thankful because, Jason and Jono are great.
Not Jason Akers.
No, not Jason from Spiritual Babies, Jono Vandor from Torah Pearls. Michael Skobeck I really have to give, he is such a great teacher.
You know what it is? He's a sweet man.
He is a sweet man.
And he's a really sweet man. And so you can't help but listen to what he's got to say. And he approaches it.
And he's so logical.
Yeah, he approaches it in a really good manner. And he's just all around just a really great guy. I mean, you can tell if you've ever talked to him or if you've ever seen his videos. He's just a really down to earth, great guy.
Yeah.
And you just want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I have listened to Michael Skobeck so much, I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
I listen to him so much, and his videos really, I don't know what it is about his style in particular, but I really felt like I had all of the head knowledge after listening to Michael Skobeck, and then that kind of led me over to Tanakh Talk, which there were only a few episodes up at that point in time, and then I was the very first time I ever heard Tovia Singer, and Tovia Singer, when you're at that point of in your head, but you can't just change your heart yet. You haven't had a change of heart. He kind of just hammers it over your head
I'll
over
tell
and
you
over
what,
again.
I will admit right now, when it comes to Tovia Singer, I hated that guy. When I first heard him, and if he's listening right now, I don't hate you anymore. I love you. You're amazing. But I hadn't heard enough yet. And I heard Tovia Singer. Now, he really does hit home. He really says some things, and he will say on his shows, you listen to him on William Hall, on Tanakh Talk. They do, what is it? What is that book that he's got?
Oh, I can't remember.
Jews for Judaism? No.
Why Jews don't believe in Jesus? I don't know.
No,
I can't remember.
I can't remember. See, William's going to be mad at me now. It's a 2-volume set. If I had him sitting right here, I'd be just like William Hall. But anyway, he does these shows on Tanakh Talk. He's done over 400 episodes. And he will right out say, no, that's wrong. No, that's not right. No, that's wrong. And when you're coming out of Christianity, it could be kind of harsh. But after you have delved into scripture enough and you realize he's really only trying to help you. He really is, and he really means to help, and it's just the way he go about it. That's just the way he is. And so you really kind of need to expect that when you hear Tovia Singer. And if you listen to him, you will understand, because he makes it really simple. And that's one of the ways that I came around to actually loving him so much, is because my wife got his books and I read his books, and it's like an encyclopedia of the New Testament, and it points out how Matthew is wrong, how Mark is wrong, and Luke and John and all these. He just really, every single scripture that the New Testament uses to try to reference back to the Tanakh, he shows, no, this is how it's taken out of context. This is why it's wrong. He goes through the genealogy. If you've ever had that question, that's a question that was up with me and both my wife and me, was why are the genealogies wrong in Luke and Matthew? He explains why. It's just really, really good. And I'm going to link his books as soon as I remember the name. I'm going to go in there when I get done with this video, and I'm going to link them in the bottom of this video. So give him a shout out. He sells them on Amazon.
If you're coming out of Christianity, you need those books.
And now he provides the information for free. You can get it off of his website, but you really do need the books in your hand. It really is a great learning tool. And they've got CDs out too that work really well if you listen to them side by side while you read the book. You gotta have it. It's just a tool that anyone coming out of Christianity needs.
I think that it's more so the way I found his books so wonderful is answering all the questions that my family members have, because we had questions that we needed answered, but then other people have different questions that bother them worse. Like some people just get the genealogies, but some people are like, well, what about the virgin birth? And that was one I was like,
yeah, why is it even needed?
The virgin birth, that is so blatantly obvious to me why that's not correct. But for other people, they really, really need help in understanding why the virgin birth isn't correct. And so I think having those, because you're going to get questions from family and friends and be like, well, why don't you believe this? And what about that?
Well, if there's one piece of information, one question that I really think you need to use when you're coming out of Christianity is, and this is something that Tovia Singer has actually said many times, is that you need to ask yourself the question, when was the Bible written? What were the people in that time period? What beliefs did they have? What were the writers of the New Testament? What were the writers of the New Testament trying to convey to their readers? They needed to write it in a way their readers would understand. And so you've got these things like the virgin birth, what is it? Vicarious atonement. Mm-hmm. These are things that were believed in Greek mythology. And during the time of Greece and Rome, these were really big into their pagan religion. And so they needed to, in order to get people to follow along with the New Testament and buy it hook, line, and sinker, they had to throw these things in there that would, so you'd understand what you were reading. Because just to go and quote the Tanakh word for word, no one understands that. And so they have to put a pagan twist on it so that they could get people to follow Christianity. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why it went off and made such a huge impact on civilization at the time, because it's a book on their religion. It's not a book about God. It's a book about Hercules. It's a book about, Mithras. It's these things that they can actually relate to. And that's what it's about. And I thought that was a really good point. And that's what you really have to ask yourself. When the Torah was written, like what, over 4,000 years ago? And it was written during a time where you had these, what is it? The human sacrifice. And, all these things, the real deep paganism. And that's written about in the Torah. Mm-hmm. trying to take, because it's really the Torah is really a story about the Jews and or I should say the Hebrew people, not necessarily Jews, because actually the Jews really didn't become Jews until after the nations split, the 10 tribes and the Jewish tribe. But it's really about the Hebrew people. It's about their beginnings and their endings, and what they were dealing with during their time. So
yeah.
But yeah, you really need to get Tovia Singer's books. They're great. And that's just, he doesn't pay us to do this. We're just saying it's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, going through it, I wish I had those books a lot sooner.
And don't, you know what? I'll tell you right now, you can buy them as a gift for your loved ones, but make sure your loved ones aren't going to be. I did that. I made the mistake.
That is a mistake, yeah.
I wish I had never done it. I bought the books for my dad, and because he got my father got very hostile towards me when he found out that I was converting to Judaism, or that I'm going down this path, that I was leaving my faith behind. And so he still somewhat will ask me questions, and I feel like it's my responsibility to answer to the best I can. I usually just turn him over to a Michael Skobac video or a Tovia Singer lecture or something like that. But every now and then I know the answer, and I'll just I'll tell him. And he gets really angry, really upset. So it's really play it by ear.
He gave him the 2-volume set for a Father's Day gift because he wanted to know where he was getting all his information from. And he thought it would be helpful because it had been so tremendously helpful during our transition. And I think that, I know from a Christian standpoint, when you learn what you consider new truth and you're learning things, you want to share it with everyone, and that's the duty of a Christian.
I still want to share it with everyone because it's beautiful. It's really,
it is.
To understand what God wants out of you, it is really wonderful.
Right. I think, though, as a Christian, you're encouraged to share those things that you learn.
And I was coming out of Christianity, so I still have that.
Yeah.
I still have that a little bit, but I've pretty much gotten away from it almost all entirely.
I think that's, coming out of Christianity, that is one of the things that I've really had a difficult time learning how to do in not preaching to people what I think.
Well, see, the thing is, the Jewish nation is supposed to be a light to the nations, and lights don't make any noise. They just shine. And so you really have to follow the law. You really have to do what you're supposed to do, and when a question is asked, answer, but don't go and proselytize.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing, and I still do it. It's been, what has it been, like 3 years or something, and I still will catch myself on the phone with my mom, kind of like telling her about stuff that I probably should just keep my mouth shut, and because she's still in this religion, she's in the Christian religion, they're still going down that rabbit hole, and for a long time, it really sickened me that they were being taken advantage of by these ministers, because my parents are in this church, my sisters are in the church, both of them are married to husbands, and they tithe to them, and just all this money that's basically being extorted from these poor people, and it's a lie.
And they just want a place to belong.
Me. Yeah, and they just want a place to belong, and they think that they're right, and they have no clue. The
biggest thing I've noticed with Christian faith is don't listen to anyone but us. That's a big thing with one of the Herbert Armstrong. And that's how cults work, is you're not allowed to listen to anyone but us. But you can use all of our stuff as much as you want. Use all of our information, listen to our propaganda, read our propaganda, watch our DVDs, watch our videos, do all this. And really, it's a way to keep you under control, because if you don't do what they say and you start going off like we did, you realize what they're saying is not true, and they're just trying to take advantage of your poor situation, because you're just really in a bad situation. Every soul needs to be close to God, and every soul desires to be close to God. And what these men and women are doing is they're interrupting your communicational signal with God, between your soul and God. And they are taking advantage of you. And so you really need to, if you've got questions, you really need to research. Look at everything. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take our word for it. Go look it up. Look into your Tanakh. Pull it out and open it up and read it. Learn Hebrew.
Look at other people's opinions, because that's one thing that I consistently did, is you have to look at all sides. I mean, I looked at the Jewish side, I looked at the Jews for Jesus side, I looked at Catholic, I looked at Protestant, I looked everywhere. Atheist.
I looked into Hinduism. I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I looked at Hindus, because if you get into Judaism and you start getting really deep into like reincarnation and things like that, that sounds like Hindu. And so you get into you need to really research everything.
Yeah, you really do. And I feel like the more you study and the more you learn, not just through the Tanakh, but through history. History is really important to know. I learned so much in those months studying. I felt the Catholic religion. I learned so many things that I did not know, because we had been raised reading a skewed story of what the true church history was. And it had nothing, they didn't really talk anything about what happened in Catholicism. And I read Eusebius's books several times. And I've read things from different church fathers and articles in the Catholic Encyclopedia that were just so interesting, and reading, things on archaeology and different topics on Bibles and where they came from and the histories of these Bibles and how we use these Bibles to assemble the Bibles that we have today.
So basically what we're trying to say is you need to do your research. Yes, it's a lot of work, but when it really boils down to it, what's your life worth to you? Is it worth a little bit of work? It should be. If it isn't, you might need to go have a psychological evaluation.
Right. The famous saying, an
uneducated mind?
No. I think it's Plato. No, I can't remember.
Plato's really fun to play with. My sisters loved Plato. My daughter loves Plato.
I think
Everybody
it's
loves
the uncontemplated life is not worth living. So basically, if you're not spending your time, contemplating what this world means, and why you're here, and the things around you, what are you here for if not to do that? And it's amazing. It opens up so much.
So we've come along here. We've got about 33 minutes or so. So we've gone over a little bit, but we're going to try to keep all of these podcasts to about 30 minutes long. Like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll listen to you. We'll come along probably in the next couple days or so and do another show for you. Subscribe, comment in our videos, let us know what you think. And if you have anything you want to ask us, anything you think we might need to talk about, or any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And y'all have a great day, and I guess we'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye.